Not a lot's known about why Section 64 of the Doctrine and Covenants was given. All Joseph Smith says in his history is that he was making preparations to move to the John Johnson home in Hiram, Ohio, after the Isaac Morley farm was sold where Joseph was living. Other than that, we don't really know. As historian Stephen Harper says, this revelation is probably best understood as simply instructions from the Lord to the elders. Within it, the Lord's going to reiterate some instructions on selling farms, keeping farms, who stays in Kirtland, who goes to Zion. The Lord's also going to rebuke a few people, including Bishop Partridge and people like Ezra Booth. And I want to talk about Ezra Booth with you for 1 second because he's an important person in church history. Ezra Booth had been baptized in Ohio when he saw the healing of Eliza Johnson and was amazed by the healing that Joseph Smith had done. Joseph, by the way, had also cast a devil out of Ezra Booth in a meeting that he was in with him. Well, Ezra had been called and traveled to Missouri as a missionary, and apparently as he was preaching along the way, he wasn't having the same miraculous successes and healings and miracles that Joseph Smith had done, which Ezra expected to happen. And on his journey to Missouri and back, he became disillusioned with the church and became critical of the prophet Joseph Smith. When he gets back from that, just a few days before this revelation comes, as you can see here, Ezra gets silenced from preaching on September 6th. This revelation is given on September 11th, meaning he was told to quit preaching the gospel and had his license taken away to do so. Joseph Fielding Smith, one of our former church historians and future president of the church, says, "Through the performance of a miracle he was baptized, and from that time he desired to make men believe by the performance of miracles, even by smiting them or with forcible means." George A. Smith said, "He, having formerly been a Methodist minister, commenced preaching the gospel without purse or scrip, and he did so until he found, using a common expression, it did not pay." These are their opinions on why, maybe some of the reasons Ezra fell away. More importantly, germane to the subject, is that Ezra apostatizes, denounces Mormonism as a delusion, by the way, and on the 12th of September, not long after this revelation, starts to publish a series of 9 letters to the Ohio Star, a newspaper that's there. Why are these important? Because it's going to increase some hostility towards the church in the Kirtland area, and some of those letters are going to find their way into one of the first anti-Mormon books ever published, Mormonism Unveiled, by E.D. Howe. Ezra Booth's letters and accusations are in that book. Later on, the next spring in 1832, by the way, as we all know, Joseph Smith is tarred and feathered. Sources claim that Ezra Booth, who knows which of it is in this drawing here, but suppose it's him, Ezra Booth was one of the people involved in the tarring and feathering of Joseph Smith. So just a little background on him, as he's mentioned in verse 15. One other note before I conclude this context. I do want to give some context about the word tithing in verse 23. Tithing has sometimes been referred to people, and you've heard it called this. They call it fire insurance. And to be totally honest with you, we have to be careful with that. It's a little too lighthearted. And when we think tithing, let's not be thinking 10%. It comes about from verse 23 in section 54. "Now, behold, now is called today until the coming of the Son of Man." So there's our second coming. "And verily it is a day of sacrifice, and a day for the tithing of my people. For he that is tithed shall not be burned at his coming." That's where we get this, sometimes Sunday school primary notion, or people call it fire insurance. Let's never deduce it down to, if I pay my tithing, I'm going to abide by the second coming. Understand, as it says here in the heading, tithing refers to free will offerings, voluntary sacrifice, dedicated offerings. It's probably better to render this word as consecration, because at the time, that's the law that they're living in section 42. The law of tithes, meaning 10% of our income that we give today, had not been revealed yet to the church. They're talking about people who are consecrated. And so, not crossing out the word, it might be better to write in, or on the side, to write in, "He that is tithed," or "he that is consecrated shall not be burned at his coming." And by the way, this makes sense. 2 important laws of the Lord: sacrifice, consecration. Those are important celestial laws. And what the Lord is saying here is those that are willing to sacrifice and those that are willing to live the law of consecration, those are celestial laws, and those people will abide at the second coming. I hope this context helps gives you some insight as the saints continue to ponder, ask the Lord, and receive directions on establishing the city of Zion, and the directions he gives to some of his elders there in Kirtland, Ohio at this time in September of 1831.